And now it is time for the first annual Space Domain Awareness Challenge pitch-off, where TechCrunch and Aerospace Corporation have joined forces to host a pitch competition to find the strongest startups that are using AI and machine learning to work with satellite data streams. Space domain awareness fundamentally arises from the output of a massive amount of sensor data. Space operators are totally reliant on sensors in space and on the ground to get a complete picture of what's happening in Earth's orbit and beyond. Space operators must task sensors correctly with the complex job of collecting this data. The challenge is immense. It involves parsing, packaging, and disseminating the output of a significant number of data streams to the correct data consumer across various teams at the precisely correct time. We call this scenario in space domain awareness the media streaming problem, because just like popular streaming providers, the data has to be collected, analyzed, and delivered to the correct audience at the right time, or the show isn't very good. Our top 5 finalists have illustrated experience in working with complex data streams, whether in space or not, that is needed. One winner will be announced at 11:45 a.m. later today, granting them a customer roadshow and expert-led concept and product feedback. Let's meet our esteemed judges on this panel. Ian McCubbin, Startup and VC Program Manager from Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Celeste Ford from Stellar Ventures. And Colin M. Greenfield, Program Manager, Commander, United States Navy, Space Portfolio, Defense Innovation Unit. Thank you. The pitchers have been asked to describe their company on 3 main axes. 1 is to tell us what they do. 2 is to talk about what is a competitive advantage or differentiator for their company. And 3 is to let us know why this is a venture scalable business. Why does this need VC funding? Our first finalist is Guy de Carafel, the founder of Cognitive Space. Guy, welcome. As a reminder, Guy, you will have 2 minutes, followed by 3 minutes of questions and answers from this judging panel. The microphone will be turned off at the end of those combined 5 minutes. Good luck. We're really excited to hear more.
Great. Hi, my name is Guy de Carafel, founder and CEO of Cognitive Space. Cognitive Space is offering an AI SaaS solution to automate the space domain. We are addressing 3 key challenges. First, the need to reduce latencies in both the tasking and delivery of space data. Second, the need to dynamically prioritize the mission for Earth observation, space domain awareness. And third, the need to gather the right information from a multitude of sensors. And we do this by applying graph neural networks and other deep learning methods to automate decision-making for satellite operations. Thanks to an effective team and a singular focus on the mission, we have closed over $10 million in US government contracts and have raised over $10 million from VCs. We are now in live operations managing the constellation of a publicly traded satellite operator. With our tiered pricing per satellite per month, we expect our recurring revenue to grow tenfolds over the next 3 years, given the thousands of satellites being deployed every year. And we're just getting started. Our solution is relevant across the remote sensing and satellite communication industries for a market that's expected to grow to over $80 billion by 2030. We will shape the intelligent infrastructure of the future space domain, from large-scale constellation operations to mesh network routing to data analytics to deliver the right information to the right consumer at the right time. We have a unique opportunity to shape the future of space and the world economy that depends on it. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Guy. I'll now open it up to our esteemed judging panel for 3 minutes of question and answer.
Ian, do you want to kick us off? So on the Earth observing, is your idea to have onboard image processing and downlink data, or are you thinking more just moving the packets of data across the network?
It's a great question. Thank you. So everything is interconnected, starting from the actual collection to tasking of the spacecrafts, understanding which target you should be observing based on the different priorities, latencies, cloud cover, and every other aspect, including what links you can downlink that data. There is an interconnection with the actual processing of that imagery that will drive which collection you can make and how you should be making that collection. Given, say, a large area of interest, how should you break that down and make that collection effective?
That was a great answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So how do you differentiate yourself from the commercial companies out there now that integrate data from multiple sources, not just space, but ground? And as a user, you mentioned tasking. Which sensors do I have access to? What type? SAR, EO, hyperspectral, through you?
Yeah,
So two questions.
Yeah, right. So we work with a company that has a heterogeneous constellation of multiple different sensors, some passive, some active. And so our solution is agnostic to the type of sensor. We can work with SAR, EO, infrared, even RF, to understand that sensor type, the limitations of that sensor, the limitations of the bus, to really automate that spacecraft, to maximize the use of that payload, and getting that information done quickly.
And your differentiation from companies that do that now on the ground?
So we are the first to offer this solution through an AI approach to really automate and understand the full permutation of the problem, of all the changes in the environment, the changes in the mission and the priorities, the changes in, say, cloud cover for remote sensing. And we also consider both the collection and the link management as two concurrent problems that need to be computed at the same time. Those are interdependent that oftentimes are treated independently, whereas we treat them as one problem.
So you're partnered with one prime, or you go separately to all these various sources?
Great question. So we work with any satellite operator that needs to collect data, both in space for space-to-space, space-domain awareness, or Earth observation, or even deep space. And we work with ground station networks to be able to get that data down quickly. And we work with the government to match their needs to the right provider.
Guy, you mentioned the heterogeneous constellation. Are you prepared for a continuously evolving architecture from the ground to space and back again?
Yeah,
I think unfortunately, I'm gonna have to be the keeper of the shot clock just went off, so we'll have to call it there. Colin, you can be first up for the next question for the next guest. Thank you very much, Guy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
I heard a yes.
Our second finalist is Dr. Stacy Jones, the founder and CEO of O Analytics Incorporated. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Jones. You'll have 2 minutes, followed by 3 minutes of question and answers from the judging panel. And as a reminder, the microphone will be turned off at the end of those combined 5 minutes. We're excited to hear about O Analytics.
O Analytics is pre-seed, bootstrapped, and revenue generating as we address the gap of nearly half of the catalog space objects being essentially lost and unidentified. Leveraging my background in designing the beam steering controller for the first production airborne phased array antenna, O Analytics applies signal and image processing, convolution, and machine learning to produce specific type and behavior characteristics about objects in LEO. Our differentiator is processing in near real time without lengthy model training and with the ability to detect objects that have not before been seen. Our patent-pending Delta algorithm software is physics-based and it uniquely performs ambient level correction, resolves divergence, renders motion features, and tests kinematic values to rank hypothesis tracks. Our collective team experience tells us that improving SDA is a signal processing problem first, then we apply elements of AI, not the other way around. We've gained traction now on our 6th Air Force Space Force contract, and now we're upping our performance with super resolution techniques used in the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and also in facial recognition. I'll leave you with Major General Miller of Spacecom's statement where he says that someone's got to figure this out. O Analytics is responding with actionable insights for varying military intelligence and commercial end users. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
I'm sorry about that.
I'll now turn it over to our panel for 3 minutes of question and answer.
Dr. Jones, you mentioned avoiding the lengthy training time for your analytical models. How are you doing that, and how much optimization and savings are you seeing? How does that differentiate you from the rest of the folks in the space?
So we look at the problem, first of all, as a signal processing problem. So we actually are looking at kinetic values and generating hypothesis tracks first. Then we apply those elements of AI, convolution, machine learning, in that order. So what we're actually looking for in terms of anomalies and detection is based on less data and actually more, at that point, it's better supervised.
Thank you.
Do you have pilot programs going on now for specific areas? You mentioned Alzheimer's and other non-space. Is there like a pilot program you can tell us about?
Yes, we do. So we're actually upping our performance by adding super resolution, and the algorithms are specifically coming from the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, but we're applying it to space, and also algorithms from facial recognition. So we're applying it to objects in space. So we can detect not only satellites, but we're applying it to anthropogenic or man-made debris. And we're getting super results. We work at the Deep Learning Lab as our research partner, and things are going quite well. So we do have an active pilot to develop a prototype.
Yeah, Dr. Jones. As I understand it, you're using data from different sources. You're not constrained to a particular portion of the
modality.
Yeah, exactly. And so that you're using this recognition software, and you can use a variety of different sources from either ground-based or space-based observations. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes. So our initial prototype was developed based on ground-based EO. We're now advancing to space-based electro-optical. But then we are beginning our fusion. So actually taking what we call an orthogonal modality like Doppler or radar so we can get altitude, so that then we can have better characterization of the object. So once we have completed all of that, when we're nearing that, we actually envision the ultimate space object custody management system.
And real quick, besides finding debris on orbit, you potentially could find a Earth-destroying asteroid coming in, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're characterizing objects, satellites, active and defunct, but also natural debris as well. So it could be a meteor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming our third finalist to the stage, Tom George, the CEO of Sarania Sat. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. So Sarania Sat is, strongly believes that for space domain awareness to be successful, data complexity is key, and this is a theme that has been echoed in the previous panel. So data complexity for us literally means disparate and large amounts of multimodal sensor data. And such complex big data is important for a slightly different reason, which is to minimize collateral damage, meaning false positives, and especially missed events or false negatives. So given big data, the next challenge is to provide timely insights to decision makers, and therefore Sarania Sat has focused its R&D to develop our unique H-cubed solution, or high-performance edge computing, with deep learning algorithms for rapidly processing high spatial, temporal, and spectral resolution data. So two of our accomplishments are shown on the right. The top image shows a highly cluttered 100 square kilometer Worldview 3 multispectral scene in which we identified the single flying plane in under 45 seconds on an edge computer. On the bottom, we successfully detected sub-pixel airplanes for which no spatial or geometry clues were available. So commercially, as shown on the bottom left, we are addressing very large and highly scalable global terrestrial markets using our unique combination of data complexity and low latency information delivery. Thus far, we have generated and deployed about $4 million of non-dilutive commercial and government contract revenue for de-risking our H-cube solution for our initial beachhead markets in agriculture and defense. In both cases, we are pursuing a B2B subscription business model using multiple strategies such as recurring subscriptions, tiered subscriptions, pay-per-use, and bundling our offerings with our customers' products. And now we are ready to partner with strategic investors who are not afraid to dream big. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. I'll now turn it over to our panel for some questions and answers.
Where do you get your data?
I'm sorry?
Where do you get the data that you're
So right now,
operating
so your analysis is only as good as the data, right? Ultimately, the H-cube would mean high spatial resolution, high temporal, in the case of agriculture, at least daily information, and hyperspectral, so that you can convert from a spectral point here and a spectral point there to a signature-based detection, which is not available right now. So we do the best we can, and Worldview 3 has been a good candidate, in a sense, to demonstrate the edge computing capability. Thank you.
You mentioned your edge computing capability. Are you doing all of your compute and analysis at the edge nodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious about the defense choice as a beachhead. I love it, but it's kind of unusual. There aren't too many companies that choose defense as their beachhead. Could you describe a little more about that decision?
So of course, defense is an obvious one, right, for identifying targets. But agriculture is kind of a non-intuitive one. And in my engineering career, it's been the most difficult vertical to address, because agriculture requires really high complexity, but at the lowest possible price. So you have to drill down a huge amount of data in order to tell the farmer what action to take on his field, and make sure that you don't give him the wrong advice, because if he takes your advice, he can lose his shirt if your advice is wrong, right? And so it's a very high onus on the data analytics person to provide the information, and hence a signature-based approach is the best way to do it.
Interesting. Thank you.
Following on the agriculture concept, yes, it's the farmer in the field, but the reality is in precision ag and ag tech, you're really dealing with 3 to 4 mega corporations. In terms of John Deere, Monsanto, whoever that is. Are you reaching out to those? Because that's actually where the decision's being made, and that would be the market sector I would approach, and not necessarily, it's not going to be the farmer and his tractor, it's going to be the company selling his tractor.
Absolutely. And so it's an ecosystem, as you mentioned, not just the farmer. And our B2B strategy, we got initial traction with Bayer Crop Science, which is the largest. They ate up Monsanto, actually.
Yeah.
And so with them, we proved that this hyperspectral approach works in terms of getting a signature-based early warning system. So just as with the DoD, early warning is key, because you can tell the farmer something that they cannot see with their own eyes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Please join me in giving Tom a round of applause.
Thank you.
And it's now my pleasure to welcome our fourth finalist to the stage, Marco Rocchetto, the CEO of Flux. Welcome, Marco.
Hello, thank you. So Flux is a seed stage company based in the UK and founded last year. We're working on the problem of space congestion in the context of an ever-increasing satellite burden. I'm an astrophysicist, and I founded another successful venture called Telescope Live, and other co-founders include Professor Ingo Waldman, an Alan Turing Fellow overseeing our AI activities, and Marcel Debczynski, our business development lead. We're gaining some initial traction from both government and commercial thanks to our MVP. We're leveraging our unique optical sensor network and our data analytics, parsing data, understanding it, and delivering it to consumers. Our unique differentiators are our optical sensor network and AI-driven data analytics. This allows us to track and map space objects that are 50 to 80% smaller than the competition. That's around 2.5 centimeters in size. Our data analytics takes image data and applies AI-driven image recognition and a stochastic feedback loop to track and identify space objects and to further understand their characteristics and behavior. We're in initial talks with investors for our seed round, which we aim to close by the end of the year. We're testing different business models with both government and commercial, and this will evolve as our traction grows. Our target addressable market is 2.5 billion. It is mostly made of satellite agencies, satellite operators, and government agencies. We aim to achieve a market share of 5 to 7% thanks to our increased global leverage. We've got an incredibly smart team. We're getting some very early traction as a seed stage company, and we excel in understanding both the data processing and the data acquisition layers. And we can also return profits to investors. So we're looking forward to the award, and thank you very much for listening.
Great. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
And I'll now turn it over to the judging panel for questions.
Your turn.
You want me to go first? Something that I thought was interesting is you're actually building hardware.
We're actually building hardware, we're actually assembling hardware. So the telescopes that we're using, the optical sensor that we're using are mostly COTS components. And this comes from really our background in managing network of telescopes. That was my previous venture. Telescope Live had to do with delivering astronomy data to astronomer researchers and astrophotographers. So that's our base, and we leverage that capability to enter the SSA market. So you might think we're an asset-driven company because we do manage hardware, but it's actually very low cost, and the value of the assets is relatively low. That allows us to acquire data very cheaply, right? And to be in control of the entire, let's say, chain of data acquisition to data delivery. And it's really what allows us to, decrease the sensitivity levels and detect these faintest signals to detect the smallest objects. So, yeah.
It could be a little bit of a differentiator, though, because gaining capital for hardware purchases is not trivial compared to software companies.
With our seed round, we want to extend our current network, which includes 10 locations, to 25. And that's mostly to observe LEOs. So LEO observations are mostly done with radar today, which is extremely expensive. A radar station can cost anything between 5 to 6 million. A single optical station can cost, 100K. Of course, you've got weather, clouds are in the way, but then to overcome that, you just, distribute telescopes around the globe. So definitely it's our differentiator, and we aim to get full LEO coverage. Well, we have partial LEO coverage now, full LEO coverage by the end of our, seed activities.
What customer pull have you experienced most?
Yeah, so
strongly?
We have the UK government as an early customer early this year. There are 2 new bids that are open now, to which we are applying. We're confident we might get them, both for data provision, but also for software provision. So one of the key differentiators is also in our software, our scheduling software, our data analytics software that we can license to the UK government. And then we've got commercial operators. Right now, we're targeting flight dynamicists, some satellite operators, other SSA operators that need data to track debris and satellites to avoid collision. So they just need to reduce the risk of collisions by fine-tuning, let's say, the uncertainties of the orbits.
Great. Thank you very much, Marco, and appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
And now, please join me in welcoming our last and fifth finalist, Luisa Buenjas, the co-founder and chief program officer of Vyoma, who will be joining us virtually via Zoom from Germany. Luisa, welcome.
All right, thank you.
You'll have 2 minutes, followed by 3 minutes of questions and answers from our judging panel. We're excited to hear what you have to share.
Imagine that you spend 5 years building a satellite, and at the moment that it goes up in space, it is hit by a piece of debris. Your satellite gets destroyed along with your time and your investment. We are Vyoma, the world's first organization to launch a fleet of space cameras to monitor space objects from orbit itself. Now, this unique mission will contribute to SDA efforts by mapping space traffic very accurately. And the images recorded are processed with machine learning to denoise objects and pinpoint with high fidelity the positions and trajectories of space objects in real time. The data is then paired with predictive algorithms to provide safety services, such as behavioral threat warnings or collision avoidance maneuvers. We run a subscription model, having paying customers in the defense sector. And we expect our revenues to grow 500% over the next 5 years as we build up the constellation to up 12 space cameras. And what drives this growth is not only the size of the constellation and the accuracy of the data and the services that we provide, but also network effects. After all, if you are a satellite operator, you wouldn't want to miss out in joining the world's most reliable source of space traffic information. Vyoma was founded in 2020 here in Munich, Germany, and we are now a team of 25 engineers. And as a testament of the importance of keeping space safe, we have raised over 10 million euros in seed funding alone. We won 5 contracts with the European Space Agency and the European Commission, and we kicked off the manufacturing of our space cameras that will fly already next year. So join us in giving space safety the attention that it deserves. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luisa. I'll now turn it over to our panel for questions and answers.
So you mentioned you're launching next year, your first. Did you build this in-house or did you outsource? And how many do you need to do the full mission? And what timeline is that?
All right, that is a great question. We work with a partner optical payload manufacturer here, also in Munich. So we provided the requirements and the performance specifications for the buildup of this optical instrument. We will launch the first 2 pilot satellites carrying this payload at the end of next year, and we will build up the constellation to a total of 12 satellites in a phased approach. So it will be 2 pilots coming up next year, and it will be followed by 4 more in 2026 and 6 more in 2028.
Dr. Buenjas, you mentioned 12 satellites deployed in LEO. Was that correct?
Correct.
Okay. How much coverage do you anticipate? How adaptable do you anticipate your constellation being?
So the constellation, the geometry of the constellation and the observation concept of the payload has been optimized in order to observe as many objects in a certain recorded frame as frequently as possible. And this is the key aspect to the design of this constellation. This is also patent protected. So there are 2 patents which were submitted, which describe the design of this constellation and the pointing object. And we observe objects from next year from 5 centimeters above in the LEO regime and the larger objects in the geostationary belt. Now, in the second generation of the constellation, we will actually bring this down to a handful of centimeters only. So we'll be able to observe objects from 1 to 2 centimeters and above, which are too dark, too faint, and too small to actually be observed from the ground.
Thank you.
You talk about a subscription-based model, right? So you have an idea for how to generate revenue, and your target market's defense. Are you thinking about going into smaller countries and marketing to their defense agencies, or do you have major customers that you've already identified?
Yeah, so we're currently running so we have paying customers on the defense side, but we're also trialing paid trials on the commercial side. They just haven't been, they're still in the pilot customer stage, but we're definitely targeting the commercial sector as well as space insurance companies who themselves want to tailor their risks by looking at long-term trends on the evolution of space traffic and space congestion.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Buenjas. It was fantastic to hear what you had to share with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to give a big thank you to all of our finalists and to our esteemed judging panel, Ian, Celeste, Cullen. It was fantastic to hear your questions. Our judges will now exit the stage and deliberate in private quarters, and the winner will be announced later today at 11:45 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you all for watching, and now a short video from our sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Half the world doesn't have access to the internet. That's 4 billion people globally still on the wrong side of the digital divide. But a revolution is taking place. Internet beamed down from the skies and space is coming. Affordable, super fast, and ultra secure. And available in places where up to now internet connectivity has been unthinkable. The biggest tech companies in the world are building communication networks of interconnected satellites in space to reach the most far-flung corners of the world. Laser communication allows them to exchange data at ultra-high speeds and over vast distances. It delivers crisis connectivity to disaster areas and ensures ultra-secure communication of key data. And it delivers high-speed broadband internet coverage to anywhere on Earth. Mynaric designs, manufactures, and distributes these game-changing products.